I was staring at my sister's face on national television when I realized the poison was finally working its way out of my system. Not poison in the literal sense, though God knows Emma had tried that once before. No, this was the poison of a wasted life, of 23 years spent as her unwitting stepping stone. But that was in my previous life. In this one, I was watching her accept an award for her novel, the same novel she'd stolen from my diary 3 years from now, and I was smiling because this time, every single word she'd memorized was a carefully crafted lie. The pills scattered across my childhood desk told the real story of my first life. The sleeping pills I'd taken when I couldn't bear another day of being Emma's shadow. I remembered swallowing them one by one, remembered the darkness, and then the impossible. Waking up on my 16th birthday, 6 years before my death, with every painful memory intact. The diary sat exactly where I'd left it that morning, pink and innocent and deadly. "Lily!" My mother's voice cut through my thoughts like it always did. Sharp, impatient, dismissive. "Emma needs you to help her pick an outfit for the scholarship interview. Stop whatever useless thing you're doing and get in here." I closed the diary carefully, running my fingers over the lock I knew was useless. Emma had picked it 100 times in my previous life. She'd pick it again in this one. I was counting on it. "Coming, Mom." But first, I had to remember how we got here. In my previous life, I'd been the invisible daughter. Not literally, I existed, I took up space, I consumed resources, but in every way that mattered to my family, I was a ghost. Emma was the sun, and I was something that crawled in the shadows she cast. My parents, Miranda and James Harrison, had never wanted two daughters. They'd wanted Emma, perfect and beautiful and clever, and then I'd come along 2 years later, unexpected and unwanted. My mother never said it directly, but I knew. I'd always known. It was in the way she sighed when I entered a room, the way she forgot my parent-teacher conferences, the way she'd correct me with annoyance but guide Emma with patience. Emma was going to be a writer. It was decided when she was 12 and wrote a short story that won a local competition. Never mind that I'd helped her with the entire plot. Never mind that I'd stayed up 3 nights fixing her grammar and restructuring her scenes. The trophy went on her shelf and I went back to being invisible. I loved writing. God, I loved it more than breathing. I filled notebook after notebook with stories, with characters who felt more real to me than my own family. But I'd learned early not to share them. The one time I'd shown my mother a story, I was 9, so proud of the 10 pages I'd written. She'd glanced at it and said, "That's nice, dear. Maybe you could help Emma with her homework instead." So I wrote in secret. I poured my heart into private, journals and locked diaries, and I told myself it was enough. I told myself a lot of lies in my first life. By the time I was 16, the age I was now, again, the pattern was set in stone. Emma got the encouragement, the opportunities, the attention. I got her hand-me-downs and the task of making her look good. When Emma needed help with calculus, I tutored her for weeks. She got an A. When I got an A in the same class the next year, no one noticed. College was supposed to be my escape. I'd worked myself to the bone, maintained a perfect GPA despite having to work part-time because Emma's creative pursuits took all the family money. I got into a prestigious university on a full academic scholarship. Emma got into a mediocre state school. My mother's response? "Lily, you're so selfish. You know Emma's been struggling. You should go to community college for a year or two. Save some money so we can help your sister transfer somewhere better." I'd gone to my university. It was the only time I'd ever stood up for myself, and my mother didn't speak to me for 3 months. But college wasn't the escape I'd hoped for. I came home every holiday, every summer. Emma always needed something: help with her essays, connections to my professors, access to my research. And like a fool, I gave it to her. Because she was my sister. Because I loved her, despite everything. Because I thought if I just helped her enough, proved myself useful enough, maybe my family would finally see me. The diary changed everything. I'd started keeping it my sophomore year of college during a particularly brutal creative writing workshop. We were supposed to write a novel, just a draft, nothing formal, but it had to be complete. I'd been working on a story for years in my head, refining it, perfecting it. It was about a girl who discovered she could manipulate luck itself, who used that power to escape an abusive family and build an empire. It was raw and angry and brilliant, if I could say that about my own work. I wrote it all in that diary. Every plot point, every character arc, every twist. It was 400 pages of my soul. Emma found it during winter break of my senior year. I'd been stupid enough to bring it home, to leave it in my childhood room. I didn't know she'd taken it until much later. She photographed every page, I later discovered. Every single word of my story stolen while I slept under the same roof. 6 months after I graduated, Emma announced she'd written a novel. She'd dropped out of college to focus on her art, which meant she'd spent a year living off our parents while I worked 2 jobs to pay off my student loans. Her novel was getting interest from agents. Within a year, she had a 6-figure book deal. I read the announcement in my apartment, the place I could barely afford because I was sending money home to help with family expenses. The title made my blood run cold. Lucky Break. It was my story, my characters, my words barely changed. The girl with luck manipulation, the abusive family, the rise to power, all of it mine, all of it published under Emma's name. I confronted her at the book launch. I'd brought my diary, my evidence, my proof. Emma looked me in the eye and laughed. "Who's going to believe you?" she'd said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "You're so jealous, Lily. You've always been jealous. This is really sad, honestly." My mother was there. She'd flown across the country for Emma's launch but had missed my college graduation. She pulled me aside with a grip like iron on my arm. "Don't you dare ruin your sister's night," she hissed. "This is Emma's moment. For once in your miserable life, stop trying to steal her spotlight." I left. I went home. I looked at my diary, my proof, my useless proof, and I realized no one would ever believe me. Emma had the published book, the media attention, the family support. I had a diary that anyone could claim I'd written after the fact, out of jealousy. The book became a bestseller, then a movie deal. Emma was on talk shows and magazines, living the life I'd dreamed about since I was a child. My story launched her into stardom. And me? I worked as a content writer for a marketing firm, churning out bland copy about products I didn't care about. I went home to an empty apartment every night. I stopped writing entirely. How could I, when I'd seen what happened when I tried? My family never apologized, never even acknowledged that they might have been wrong. Emma sent me a signed copy of her book for my 23rd birthday with a note. "Thanks for always supporting me, sis." I took the pills a week later. I was just so tired. Tired of being invisible, tired of being used, tired of existing in a world where the only person who'd ever loved me, wasn't enough. But death, apparently, had other plans. I woke up in my childhood bed, in my childhood body, on the morning of my 16th birthday. The diary, empty, new, a birthday present from my grandmother who'd died when I was 12, sat on my desk. For 3 days, I thought I was having a psychotic break. I remembered everything from my previous life with perfect clarity, but I was 16 again, with Emma still in high school, with college and the betrayal still years away. It seemed impossible. Then I started noticing the details. The calendar showed the exact date I remembered. The news reported events I'd lived through before. Emma came into my room complaining about the exact same boy who'd rejected her, using the exact same words. It was real. I'd been given a second chance. The question was, what was I going to do with it? My first instinct was to hide everything, to never write that story, to never give Emma the chance to steal it. But that felt like letting her win in a different way. She'd already taken 7 years of my future. I wouldn't let her take my art too. Then I had a better idea. A brilliant, terrible, perfect idea. I would write the diary exactly as I had before. I would let Emma find it, let her steal it, let her think she was getting away with the perfect crime. But this time, the story would be a trap, a beautiful, carefully constructed trap that would destroy her the moment she tried to use it. It took me 2 weeks to plan it out. I knew from my previous life exactly when Emma would search my room, Christmas break of my freshman year, exactly how she'd do it. She'd jimmy the lock with a hairpin while I was at work, and exactly what she'd be looking for. Anything she could use to make herself look better. So I gave her something to find. I wrote "Lucky Break" again in the diary, but this time I changed key elements. The protagonist still had luck manipulation, still escaped her family, still built an empire. But I wove in 3 critical differences. First, I incorporated detailed, specific elements from several obscure published works, a paragraph structure from a 1970s Brazilian novel that had never been translated to English, character dynamics from a German play, plot devices from a Japanese light novel. Not plagiarism exactly, but close enough that anyone doing a deep investigation would find uncomfortable similarities. Emma wouldn't know to check these sources. She didn't read widely, didn't study craft. She'd think my story was completely original. Second, I embedded a protagonist whose character arc would be poison to Emma's public image. The girl in my new version wasn't just escaping abuse. She was a manipulative narcissist who used her power to destroy innocent people, who felt no remorse, who was ultimately exposed as a monster. It was a dark, uncomfortable story that could work as literary fiction if handled by a skilled writer. But Emma wasn't a skilled writer. She'd soften it, trying to make the protagonist likable, and it would come across as confused and problematic. Third, and most importantly, I included several key plot points and character details that were direct references to real events in our family, things that would be obvious to anyone who knew us. Emma wouldn't notice because she barely paid attention to family dynamics unless they affected her directly. But I would have proof, documented proof with timestamps, that these specific details were from our lives before she wrote them. Then I created a backup. I wrote the real version of Lucky Break, the good version, the version I actually wanted to publish someday, and I hid it. I scanned every page and uploaded it to multiple cloud services with date stamps. I sent copies to trusted friends from school with instructions not to open them unless I asked. I created an evidence trail that couldn't be disputed. And then I waited. "Lily!" Emma's voice now joining our mother's. "Are you coming or what?" God, you're so slow. I grabbed the diary and walked down the hall to Emma's room, bigger than mine, of course, with better light and more space. Was surrounded by outfit options, looking predictably perfect in that effortless way she had. Blonde hair, blue eyes. The kind of beauty that made people want to help her. Finally, she sighed. Which one says serious student but also creative genius? In my previous life, I'd helped her pick the Navy dress. She'd gotten the scholarship. This time I was more careful. "The Navy one is safe," I said. "But if you really want to stand out, the red one is more memorable." The red one was too bold, too attention-seeking. It would make her look like she was trying too hard. Emma looked at it, considering. "You think so?" "Definitely. It shows confidence." She smiled, that dazzling smile she used when she wanted something. "You're so good at this stuff, Lily. I don't know what I'd do without you." You'd have to develop your own taste, I thought. Your own ideas. Your own work. That's what sisters are for, I said aloud. I left her to get ready and went back to my room. The diary was calling to me. I had 6 months before Christmas break. 6 months to fill it with the perfect trap. But it had to be gradual, had to look natural. I couldn't just write the entire novel in one go. Emma would be suspicious if I suddenly had a complete manuscript. So I started slowly, the way I had before. A character sketch here, a scene there, notes on plot structure and theme. I made it look like I was developing the story organically, working through problems, figuring things out. I even included some bad ideas that I crossed out to make it look authentic. The real work happened in my real notebooks, the ones I kept in a locked box under a floorboard I'd loosened in the corner of my closet. That's where I wrote the actual good version, the story I plan to publish someday under my own name. That's where I kept my evidence log, documenting every time Emma borrowed something of mine, every time my mother chose her over me, every interaction that would later prove the pattern of abuse. I was building a case, and I was patient. The next 6 months passed in a strange blur of déjà vu. I knew what was coming, so I prepared. When Emma asked me to help her with her college essays, I did. But this time, I kept copies of every draft I edited, every suggestion I made, timestamped and saved. When my mother forgot my birthday but threw Emma a huge party for hers, I documented it. Photos, receipts, messages. I got a job at the local library, the same job I'd had before, but this time I used my paychecks differently. Instead of giving money to my parents for family expenses that somehow only benefited Emma, I opened a secret bank account. I saved every penny. I made plans. I also made connections. The head librarian, Ms. Chen, was a former literary agent. In my previous life, I'd been too shy to really talk to her. This time I asked questions. I learned about the publishing industry, about how agents worked, about the importance of paper trails and copyright protection. You're a smart girl, Lily, Mrs. Chen said one afternoon. Are you interested in writing? Maybe, I said carefully, I have some ideas. If you ever want someone to look at your work, I'd be happy to. I don't take on clients anymore, but I can give you feedback. Lord knows I've seen enough manuscripts to know quality when I see it. That was an opportunity I hadn't had before. Thank you, that means a lot. Just remember, she said, her eyes sharp, in this industry, you have to protect your work. Always, always protect your work. There are people who will steal it without a second thought. I wondered if she knew, if she could see what was happening in my family. But I just nodded and said, I'll remember that. At school, I intentionally became more visible. I joined the creative writing club, submitted stories to the school literary magazine, made friends with people who appreciated my work. I created a public record of my talent, my voice, my style. So that later, when it mattered, people would be able to say, yes, that sounds like Lily's writing. That's her voice. Emma noticed the change in me, though she interpreted it wrong. You seem happier lately, she said one day, almost suspicious. Did you get a boyfriend or something? Just enjoying life, I said. Junior year's supposed to be fun, right? She relaxed. In Emma's world, I was allowed to be happy as long as it didn't interfere with her plans. As long as I remained useful. I let her think that. Christmas break of my freshman year of college arrived exactly on schedule. I came home with my duffel bag and my laptop, and my carefully crafted diary, now full of a year and a half of fake story development. The diary sat on my desk, locked but not hidden, an invitation Emma couldn't refuse. I made sure to be busy that week. I picked up extra shifts at the library, still worked there during breaks, volunteered to run errands, stayed out of the house as much as possible. I gave Emma plenty of opportunity. On the third day, I came home early on purpose. I'd forgotten something, a classic move. I walked quietly up the stairs and paused outside my room. The door was cracked open. I'd left it closed. I could hear the soft click of a phone camera, the rustle of pages. For a moment, the rage from my previous life threatened to overwhelm me. She was in there right now, stealing my work, betraying me, and she didn't even have the grace to feel guilty about it. But this time was different. This time, I wanted her to steal it. I made noise in the hallway, gave her time to put everything back. When I opened the door, Emma was sitting on my bed, looking innocent. Oh, hey, she said. I was just looking for that sweater I lent you. It's in the laundry, I said. You could have asked. Sorry. She smiled, not meaning it. I didn't want to bother you. She left, and I checked the diary. Everything was slightly out of place, exactly as it had been before. The lock had been picked. I'd won the first round. Now came the hard part, waiting. The next 2 years unfolded like a chess game where I could see every move in advance. I went to college, the same prestigious university, same scholarship, and I watched Emma spiral at her state school. She was failing because no one was there to do her work for her anymore. She called me constantly, begging for help with papers, with projects, with basic life skills. I helped her, but less than before. I'm really busy, Emma. I have my own work. Each time I said it, I felt a little stronger. My parents called too, guilt-tripping me. Your sister needs you, Lily. Family comes first. But I held firm on the important things. I sent less money home. I visited less often. I built a life at school, a real life, with friends who valued me and professors who recognized my talent. And I wrote. God, how I wrote. The real version of Lucky Break became something extraordinary, better than it had been in my first life because I knew exactly what I wanted to say. I showed it to Mrs. Chen during summer break. She read it in one sitting, barely looking up. Lily, she said when she finished, this is publishable. This is really, truly publishable. I have a colleague who would kill to represent this. Not yet, I said. I need to wait for the right time. She looked at me curiously but didn't push. When you're ready, then. But don't wait too long. This deserves to be out in the world. Meanwhile, I knew Emma was preparing to make her move. I could see it in the way she'd started talking about her novel idea during phone calls, testing the waters. In the way she'd stopped asking me for help with her creative writing classes because she already had her story, stolen and ready. Right on schedule, 2 weeks before I graduated, Emma called. Lily, I did something amazing. I wrote a novel, a whole novel. That's great, Emma. I kept my voice neutral, supportive. I mean, it's just a draft, but I think it's really good. I'm going to try to get an agent. Good luck with that. Will you read it? Give me notes? This was new. She hadn't asked me to read it before, probably because she was afraid I'd recognize it. But now she was more confident, more certain that her changes had been enough. Send it over, I said. I'll take a look. The manuscript arrived in my email an hour later. I opened it with my heart pounding, and there it was. My story, my characters, my plot. Slightly reworded, slightly restructured, but undeniably mine. She'd even kept the same title. She'd also made exactly the mistakes I'd predicted. The plagiarized elements were still there, unchanged because she didn't know they were plagiarized. The protagonist's arc was confused, softened in places that made the character inconsistent. And the personal details from our family were glaring, at least to me. I made a copy and saved it with metadata intact. Then I sent Emma back notes, helpful, encouraging notes that praised her work and suggested minor improvements. Nothing that would make her suspicious. This is really good, Em. I think you have a real shot. 6 months later, Emma had an agent. A year after that, she had a book deal. 18 months after graduation, Lucky Break by Emma Harrison hit bookstores. The launch was smaller this time, less press, less excitement. The book was being positioned as dark literary fiction, and the marketing was confused because Emma had continued to soften the protagonist in edits, making the whole thing muddled. Reviews were mixed. Some praised the ambitious complexity. Others called it tonally inconsistent and ethically problematic. But it was a published book, and Emma was still getting attention for it. My parents were still proud. I was still expected to celebrate. I went to the launch party. I congratulated Emma. I smiled for photos, and I waited. The first shoe dropped 3 weeks later. A blogger who specialized in literary criticism wrote a piece called Uncomfortable Similarities, Lucky Break, and Global Literature. The post detailed the parallels between Emma's book and those obscure works I'd deliberately incorporated: the Brazilian novel, the German play, the Japanese light novel. The blogger was careful not to accuse Emma of outright plagiarism, but the implications were clear. Emma panicked. She called me crying. I don't understand. I've never even heard of these books. This is crazy. Maybe it's just coincidence, I suggested. Similar ideas happen in writing all the time. But the damage was done. Other critics picked up the story. Think pieces appeared about parallel creation versus theft, about the responsibility of new authors to research their ideas. Emma's publisher released a bland statement about having full confidence in her work, but I could read between the lines. They were worried. The second shoe dropped a month later. A feminist book reviewer wrote an essay titled Lucky Break's Problematic Protagonist, Abuse Victim or Narcissistic Abuser. The essay dissected the protagonist's journey, pointing out the inconsistencies, the moments where she seemed to show no remorse for hurting innocent people, the way the book seemed to want readers to root for her while she did increasingly indefensible things. It's as if the author couldn't decide whether she was writing a revenge fantasy or a character study in villainy, the reviewer wrote. The result is a book that feels ethically confused and potentially harmful. More essays followed. Emma's book, which had been selling moderately well, started getting returns from bookstores. Her social media filled with arguments between defenders and critics. She stopped sleeping, stopped eating. Every time I talked to her, she sounded more desperate. I don't know what to do, Lily. They're tearing my book apart. They're tearing me apart. Maybe take a break from social media, I suggested gently. Let it blow over. But it wouldn't blow over. I'd made sure of that. The third shoe was the biggest, and I dropped it myself. I published an essay on Medium titled, When Your Sister Steals Your Story, a case study in literary theft. I used a pseudonym at first, but I included everything. Screenshots of my diary entries with timestamps, photos of the original diary pages, testimonials from my creative writing professors about my style and voice, examples of my published work from the school literary magazine that predated Emma's book deal. I showed how Lucky Break was based on my life, our life, with details that Emma couldn't have known were significant unless she'd lived them. The protagonist's mother who forgot her birthday but threw elaborate parties for the sister, the father who gave the sister money while making the protagonist work for everything, the specific scholarship interview where the protagonist's advice sabotaged her sister. Wait, that last one hadn't been in the diary. That was from the real version, my version. I'd made a mistake, let something slip through. No, I hadn't. I checked my records. I'd carefully included that detail in the fake diary, knowing it would come in handy later as proof. Emma had stolen a diary that contained real events from our lives, and she'd published them without changing enough details. The essay went viral. Within 24 hours, my identity came out. I'd known it would, had planned for it. People found my social media, my LinkedIn, my published stories from college. They compared my writing style to Lucky Break. The similarities were obvious, and my voice was clearer, stronger, more consistent. Literary Twitter exploded. I Stand With Lily started trending. People shared their own stories of having work stolen by family members, by friends, by partners. Emma's publisher dropped her. Her agent dropped her. Bookstores pulled Lucky Break from shelves. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Interview requests, messages of support, angry voicemails from my mother. I ignored most of them, but I did accept an interview with a major publishing industry podcast. The hardest part, I told them, wasn't the theft itself. It was the betrayal. Emma was my sister. I helped her with everything. I loved her. And she took the thing I loved most and claimed it as her own. What do you want people to take away from your story? The interviewer asked. That your work is valuable, that you deserve to protect it, and that sometimes the people who should support you are the ones you need to protect it from. The episode got 1 million downloads in the first week, but I wasn't done. The literary scandal was just the beginning. Emma's professional destruction was only the first phase of my revenge. The real climax came when I had to face my family directly. My mother called me a week after the essay went viral, and for the first time in my life, both lives, I heard uncertainty in her voice. Lily, we need to talk. Can you come home? I don't think that's a good idea, Mom. Please, your sister is falling apart. The whole family is falling apart. We need to discuss this together. Something in her tone made me agree. Maybe it was the same part of me that had spent 2 lifetimes hoping she might finally see me. Or maybe I just wanted to witness the moment my revenge became complete. I drove home that weekend. The house looked the same, but something felt different. Smaller maybe, less powerful. They were all waiting in the living room, Mom, Dad, and Emma. Emma looked terrible, hollow-eyed and thin. She'd been beautiful in a way that made people want to help her, but now she just looked fragile, breakable. Lily. My father stood up, awkward. He'd never known how to talk to me. Thank you for coming. What did you want to discuss? We want to understand, my mother said, her voice careful. We want to hear your side. My side? As if there were multiple valid interpretations of theft. You read the essay, I said. That's my side. But Emma says she didn't steal anything, Mom pressed. She says you're making this up because you're jealous. There it was, the same accusation as my previous life. For a moment, I felt the old helplessness rising. But then I remembered. I'd planned for this. I'd prepared for exactly this moment. I have proof, I said quietly. I have the diary, the original. I have time-stamped cloud backups. I have copies I sent to friends before Emma even announced her book. I have professors who can testify to my writing style. I have published stories that predate Emma's manuscript. What does Emma have? Silence. Emma, I turned to my sister directly on, tell them. Tell them about Christmas break, freshman year. Tell them how you picked the lock on my diary. Tell them how you photographed every page. She opened her mouth, closed it, her eyes filled with tears. I thought you wouldn't mind, she whispered. You never do anything with your stories. You just write them and hide them away. I thought I could make something of it. I thought I could make you proud. The sheer audacity of it took my breath away. She'd convinced herself she was doing me a favor. You could have asked me, I said. You could have asked to collaborate. You could have asked me to help you develop your own ideas the way I always did. But you didn't. You stole it and put your name on it because you've never had an original idea in your life. That's not true, Emma stood up, suddenly angry. I've had plenty of ideas. You don't know. Name one, Pamas, I challenged. Name one idea you've had that I didn't give you, that you didn't take from me, that was actually yours. She couldn't. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. My father cleared his throat. Lily, even if what you're saying is true, she's still your sister. Family should what? I turned on him. Support each other? Protect each other? Where was that energy when Emma needed help with every single assignment? When you gave her money for supplies while I worked 2 jobs? When Mom missed my graduation but flew across the country for Emma's book launch? We didn't miss your graduation, Mom protested weakly. Yes, you did. You said you had a conflict. Emma had a gallery showing for her photography class. A photography class I'd taught her to use a camera for. You chose her. You always chose her. Because she needed us more, Mom said. And at least she was being honest now. You were always so independent, so capable. Emma needed support. So I was punished for being capable? I was neglected because I learned to take care of myself because I had to? I could see it on their faces. The dawning realization that maybe, possibly, they'd made a mistake. But it was too late. It had been too late the moment Emma photographed that diary. Here's what's going to happen, I said. Emma is going to publicly admit she stole my work. She's going to apologize in detail, explaining exactly what she did. She's going to contact her publisher and formally retract any claim to lucky break. And if she doesn't, Emma's voice was small, defeated. Then I sue. I sue for every penny you made off my story. I sue for emotional damages. I sue for copyright infringement. And I win, because I have evidence that's unimpeachable. Your career will be over anyway, but you'll also be broke and possibly facing criminal charges. You can't do this, my mother said. You're destroying your sister's life. No, Mom, Emma destroyed her own life. I'm just making sure everyone knows the truth. I stood up to leave. Lily, wait. Emma's voice stopped me. I'm sorry, I really am. I didn't realize how much it would hurt you. I didn't think you'd find out. And there it was. She wasn't sorry for stealing. She was sorry for getting caught. You have 48 hours, I told her. After that, my lawyer files. I left them there, my family, sitting in shocked silence. And for the first time in 2 lifetimes, I felt free. Emma posted her confession 2 days later. It was grudging, minimal, but it was public. She admitted to incorporating elements from her sister's diary without permission and not giving proper credit. She announced she was relinquishing all rights and royalties from Lucky Break. The internet had a field day. Emma's remaining defenders scattered. Her social media accounts went dark. She became a cautionary tale, the writer who stole from her own sister. But I wasn't satisfied with just destroying Emma's career. The real revenge, the true climax, came when I published my version of Lucky Break. Mrs. Chen had connected me with her colleague, an agent named Sarah Park. I sent Sarah the real version, the good version, the one I'd been perfecting for years. She called me 6 hours after I sent it. Lily, this is extraordinary. This is everything Emma's version should have been, but wasn't. The protagonist is complex, but consistent. The revenge arc is earned. The moral questions are handled with nuance. This is going to sell. You think so? I know so. I'm sending this out tonight. Be ready. You're going to get offers. She was right. Within a week, I had 4 publishing houses interested. Within 2 weeks, I had a book deal for 6 figures, exactly the same amount Emma had gotten. But this time, it was for a better book, a complete book, my book. The publisher wanted to rush it out, capitalize on the publicity. I agreed, but only if we could do it right. Professional edit, beautiful cover, strong marketing. They agreed to everything. Lucky Break by Lily Harrison published 8 months later. The reviews were incredible. A tour de force of revenge fantasy that grapples with real moral complexity. Harrison writes with a precision and emotional depth that marks her as a major new talent. Where the stolen version failed, the original soars. The book debuted at number 3 on the New York Times bestseller list. By week 2, it was number 1. Foreign rights sold to 15 countries. Netflix optioned it for a limited series. I was invited to speak at writers' conferences, at universities, at literary festivals. People wanted to hear my story, both the story of the theft and the story of the comeback. I became a voice for creative protection, for standing up to family abuse, for refusing to be invisible anymore. The money was good. Better than good. I paid off my student loans in one payment. I bought a beautiful apartment in the city, all exposed brick and huge windows. I quit my content writing job and became a full-time novelist. But the best part wasn't the money or the success or the recognition. The best part was the day I saw Emma in a coffee shop 18 months after my book came out. She was working behind the counter, taking orders, looking tired. She'd moved back home with our parents after everything fell apart. No publisher would touch her now. She'd tried writing under a pseudonym, but people always found out. The internet never forgot. She saw me come in, and something complicated crossed her face. Shame, maybe? Anger, regret. I ordered a coffee. I was polite. I tipped well. Lily, she said as she handed me my cup, I really am sorry. I know you don't believe me, but I am. I looked at her, really looked at her. She was still beautiful, but the confidence was gone. The sense of entitlement was gone. She just looked like a woman who'd made a terrible mistake and lost everything. I could have been cruel. Could have twisted the knife. But revenge, real revenge, wasn't about being cruel. It was about justice. I believe you're sorry, I said. I just think you're sorry about the consequences, not the action. And that's not really sorry at all. I left her there and walked out into the sunshine carrying my coffee and my success and my freedom. 3 years after my book published, I was in a different coffee shop, a nice one, the kind where writers actually worked, putting finishing touches on my 3rd novel. My 2nd book had done even better than the first, and my publisher was thrilled. I'd become one of those authors people talked about, whose books were anticipated, whose career trajectory was watched with interest. My phone buzzed. An email from a name I didn't recognize. Ms. Harrison, my name is Jessica Chen. No relation to Mrs. Chen, though I wish. I'm 17 and I just read Lucky Break for the first time. I wanted to tell you that it changed my life. My older sister has been taking credit for my art, and my parents always believe her. Your book made me realize I don't have to accept that. I don't have to be invisible. I'm documenting everything now, building my own portfolio, preparing to apply to art school on my own merit. Thank you for writing your story. Thank you for showing me it's possible to fight back. I stared at the email for a long time, feeling something warm and fierce bloom in my chest. This was why I'd done it. Not just for revenge, though that had been satisfying, but for every girl who'd ever been overlooked, used, dismissed. For every person who'd had their work stolen, their talent ignored, their existence treated as less important than someone else's ego. I wrote back, Jessica, document everything. Protect your work, trust yourself, and remember, success isn't about making the people who hurt you feel bad. It's about building a life so good they become irrelevant. Good luck. That evening, I had dinner with a group of writer friends, people who'd become important to me, who valued my work and my presence. We talked about books and ideas and the future. No one demanded anything from me. No one took me for granted. We were equals, all of us, supporting each other's dreams. Afterward, I walked home through the city, past lit windows and laughing crowds, and I thought about my 16-year-old self waking up with a second chance. I thought about the diary I'd written, the trap I'd set, the revenge I'd orchestrated. I thought about Emma, probably at our parents' house right now, maybe wondering what her life could have been if she'd just developed her own talent instead of stealing mine. Mostly, I thought about the fact that I was happy. Genuinely, completely happy. I had work I loved, people who respected me, a future that belonged to me alone. The invisible daughter had become impossible to ignore. My phone buzzed again. My agent, Sarah. Lily, amazing news. The studio just confirmed Lucky Break is officially greenlit for production. They want you involved as a consultant. Are you interested? Was I interested in seeing my story, my real story, brought to life on screen? In being paid handsomely for the privilege? In having another opportunity to tell the world about surviving family? Betrayal? Absolutely, I texted back. When do we start? The filming took place the following summer. I flew to Vancouver where they were shooting and spent 3 weeks consulting on the script, watching my characters come to life, ensuring they got the emotional beats right. On the last day of filming, the director invited me to set to watch the final scene, the climax, where the protagonist confronts her sister at a public event and exposes the truth about the stolen manuscript. The actress playing the protagonist was incredible, fierce and wounded and ultimately triumphant. The actress playing the sister was vulnerable and defensive and ultimately defeated. It was surreal watching my life, both versions of my life, played out in front of cameras. "Cut!" the director yelled. "That's a wrap!" The cast and crew erupted in applause. The director turned to me, grinning. "So, what did the source material think?" I said slowly, that it's perfect. Better than I imagined. You gave us great material to work with. This is going to be something special. That night, there was a wrap party. I didn't usually go to parties. Too many years of being ignored at family gatherings had made me wary of crowds. But I went to this one. The cast welcomed me like I belonged there. People wanted to hear my story, wanted to take photos with me, wanted to thank me for writing a book that had meant something to them. Near the end of the night, the actress who played the sister approached me. She was young, maybe 23, the age I'd been when I'd taken those pills in my first life. "I wanted to ask you something," she said. "In private, if that's okay?" We stepped out onto the balcony. The city spread below us, glittering and alive. "I read about what actually happened with your sister," she said. "The real story, not just the book, and I wondered, do you ever regret it? The public exposure, the revenge, all of it? Do you ever wish you'd handled it differently?" It was a fair question. I thought about it, really thought about it. "No," I said finally. "I don't regret it. Because handling it differently would have meant staying quiet, protecting Emma's feelings, making myself smaller to keep the peace. I did that I caught myself. My entire first 23 years of life. It nearly destroyed me. This way, I got to live. But my family chose Emma over me again and again. They made it clear I only had value if I was useful to her. That's not love. That's exploitation." I paused. The question isn't whether I regret exposing the truth. The question is whether Emma regrets stealing in the first place. And I don't think she does. I think she regrets getting caught. The actress nodded slowly. "Thank you for being honest. I wanted to play this character right, understand her motivations. I think I get it now." After she left, I stood on the balcony alone for a while, looking at the city. I thought about the girl I'd been, in both lives. The one who'd stayed quiet, and the one who'd fought back. I thought about Emma, probably working another shift at that coffee shop, probably bitter, probably blaming me for her downfall rather than taking responsibility for her choices. And I thought about all the Jessica Chens out there, reading my book, learning to protect themselves, refusing to be invisible. I pulled out my phone and opened my notes app, started typing. Novel idea number 4. A girl discovers she can manipulate time, but only in small increments. 30 seconds back, a minute forward. She uses it to survive an abusive household by always being one step ahead. But when she tries to change the big moments, she learns that some patterns can't be broken by time travel alone. They have to be broken by courage. I smiled. Another story about escaping, about fighting back, about winning. My themes, refined and returned to. Because these were the stories that mattered to me, the stories I would keep telling in different forms for the rest of my career. The diary had been destroyed once Emma confessed. I'd burned it myself, a symbolic gesture. But I had the photos, the evidence, the proof, just in case. I'd learned that lesson well. More importantly, I had my voice. No one could steal that. No one could take credit for the particular way I saw the world, the specific stories I wanted to tell. Emma had stolen my plot, but she'd never had my voice. That's why her version had failed and mine had succeeded. That's why I would keep succeeding, book after book, story after story, for the rest of my life. 4 years after my rebirth, 10 years after my death in the first timeline, I was invited to give a keynote speech at a major writers' conference. The topic was protecting your creative work in the digital age. I stood on that stage looking at hundreds of aspiring writers, and I told them my story. Not the sanitized version, not the version that protected anyone's feelings, the real version. My sister stole my diary, I said. She photographed every page of the novel I'd spent years developing. She published it under her name and became famous for it while I worked a dead-end job, unable to prove the work was mine. In my darkest moment, I felt like my life was worthless. Like I was worthless. The room was silent. But here's what I learned. Your work is valuable. Your voice is unique. Your stories matter, and you have to protect them. Not because you're paranoid, but because you're valuable. Document everything. Use cloud storage with timestamps. Share your work with trusted people who can vouch for you later if needed. Build a public record of your style, your voice, your growth as a writer. I paused, making eye contact with people in the audience. And if someone steals from you, if someone takes credit for your work, fight back, fight smart, fight with evidence, but fight. Because staying silent doesn't make you noble. It makes you complicit in your own erasure. The applause was thunderous. Afterward, dozens of people lined up to talk to me, to share their own stories of theft and betrayal, to thank me for speaking out. One woman, probably in her 50s, waited until the end. "I'm Emma," she said, and my heart stopped for a moment before I realized she meant it as a confession, not an introduction. I was Emma in my family, the one who took, who stole, who got away with it. I've watched your career, read your books, and I wanted you to know you made me realize what I was. I spent 10 years making amends. I'm still making amends. Thank you for holding up that mirror. Thank you for looking into it, I said. Not everyone does. She left, and I was alone with my thoughts. I wondered if my Emma would ever have that realization. Probably not. Some people never did. But that wasn't my responsibility anymore. My responsibility was to myself, to my work, to my readers. My responsibility was to keep writing stories that mattered, that helped people, that changed lives. I checked my phone, an email from my publisher. Book 3 is officially a NYT bestseller. #1 with a bullet. You're 3 for 3. Have you started thinking about book 4? I had. The time manipulation story, the one I'd started outlining on that balcony. It was coming together beautifully, darker and more complex than anything I'd written before. Already 50K words in, I typed back. This one's going to be special. Everything was going to be special now because I'd fought for it, planned for it, refused to accept the life others had assigned to me. Because I'd taken my diary, my trap, my weapon, my salvation, and turned it into a tool of justice. Because I'd been given a second chance and I'd refused to waste it. Epilogue, 5 years later. I'm sitting in my home office, a beautiful room with built-in bookshelves and a view of the park, putting the final touches on my sixth novel when the doorbell rings. It's unusual. I have a doorman who screens visitors. When I open the door, my mother is standing there. I haven't seen her in almost 5 years since that confrontation in the living room. She looks older, smaller somehow. There's gray in her hair that wasn't there before. "Lily," she says, "may I come in?" I consider saying no. Consider closing the door on her the way she closed doors on me for 23 years. But I'm curious, so I step aside. She walks into my apartment slowly, taking in the space. The original artwork on the walls, the awards on the mantel, the framed cover of my first book prominently displayed. All the visible proof that I'd made it without her, without any of them. "You've done well," she says finally. "Yes." "Emma's in therapy now. Your father and I are too. Family therapy." "Good." She turns to face me. "I've been thinking a lot about the things you said, about the ways we failed you. You were right. We chose Emma over you again and again. We told ourselves it was because she needed us more, but the truth is..." She pauses, and I see tears in her eyes. "The truth is, you were easier to ignore. You didn't demand attention. You didn't fall apart when we weren't looking. So we let ourselves believe you didn't need us." It's the most honest thing she's ever said to me. "Why are you telling me this now?" I ask. "Because I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything. I know it's too late to give you the childhood you deserved, the support you needed. But I wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what we did to you. And I'm sorry." I look at my mother, really look at her, and I see the regret there. It's real. It's too late, but it's real. "I appreciate you saying that," I tell her, "but I need you to understand something. I don't need your approval anymore. I don't need your recognition, or your pride, or your love. I have a life I built myself. Success I earned myself. Happiness I created myself. With or without your apology, I'm fine." She flinches but nods. "I know, I can see that. You're remarkable, Lily. You always were. I just couldn't see it. Because you never looked." "No," she agrees quietly. "I never looked." We stand there in awkward silence. I don't invite her to sit down. I don't offer her tea. This isn't a reconciliation. It's just closure. "Emma wants to apologize too," she says. "In person, if you'd be willing to see her." I'm not ready for that. Maybe someday, maybe never. Tell her I wish her well in therapy. My mother nods. She moves toward the door, then stops. "The book," she says. "Lucky break. I read it. All of it. It was beautiful, Lily. It was everything Emma's version tried to be but couldn't, because it had your heart in it, your truth. I'm proud of you. I know I have no right to say that, but I am." "Thank you," I say, and I realize I mean it. Not because I need her pride, I don't, but because it's nice to be seen, even if it's too late. After she leaves, I go back to my office. I sit at my desk, pull up my manuscript, and I write. The words flow easily now after years of practice, after finally learning to trust my own voice. My phone buzzes. Sarah, my agent. "Great news. Book 5 film rights just sold. They want you as executive producer this time. Are you interested?" I laugh out loud. Of course I'm interested. "Let's do it," I type back. I return to my manuscript, to the story I'm telling. Another tale of a woman who refuses to be broken, who fights back, who wins. My themes, my voice, my truth. And I think about that girl with the diary, the one who'd been invisible for so long that death seemed like the only way out. I think about the gift she was given, a second chance, a reset, a do-over. I think about what she did with it, planned, prepared, fought, won. That girl was me, is me, will always be me, and I'm not invisible anymore. I never will be again.